Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Recently, a judge gave the go-ahead to the Missouri Transportation Commission to give big pay raises to MoDOT employees statewide. And now, several Republican lawmakers vow not to let that happen again when they get back to Jefferson City next year. Rudy Keller is the deputy editor of the Missouri Independent. He is following all this and joins us again. Rudy, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm good. First, why did this have to go all the way to court, and where does the money come from? And then how much will they get?
Well, when it was filed, it was worth about I think about $60 million to MoDOT employees. And with the idea that the department was experiencing incredibly high turnover. Last year, we didn't notice it much because we had a mild winter, but they're hundreds of snowplow drivers short. And so when they decided they were going to do this plan to provide raises, they sent the notice to the state agency that processes payroll, and the head of that agency said, no, this exceeds the legislator appropriated amounts. So the Highway and Transportation Commission, which is a separate constitutional body, decided that they would test all the various constitutional provisions that govern them to determine whether they could push these raises through, even though the legislature had not allowed them.
So is this gas tax money, Rudy?
Yeah, it comes from the fuel taxes we pay, the registration fees you pay, the license fees you pay for your motor vehicle. So all of that goes together into the state road fund. And under the Constitution, to prevent legislators from delaying road projects or putting all the money in one part of the state that has the political power, the Constitution says that this money stands appropriated, which means the Highways and Transportation Commission can use it for whatever allowable purpose, which is mainly building highways or paying bonds for highways or the salaries of people who work on the highways.
Remind me, was this like a 5%, at least a 5% raise? And obviously, I guess the Transportation Department considers it overdue.
Oh, it was much more than a 5% raise. In the past 2 years, state employees generally have gotten in the neighborhood of, when you compound it, almost 17% of a pay raise. What the department had in mind was to get everybody, not everybody, but 65% of their employees to the midpoint of their salary ranges. The idea being that with only a handful of employees, fewer than 20% at that level, it was very difficult to keep people for a long time. And they came upon this when they were experiencing extremely high turnover. Here's an example of what's happened. From 2018 to 2022, the average number of years experience in the Department of Transportation fell from 11.3 years to 8.3 years. And so you've got to lose a lot of long-term employees to have that big of a drop in your overall experience level. So they saw a need for attracting the snowplow drivers. We all want to be there in the winter, but also the engineers that are important for supervising the design and construction of new road projects.
So now we have those 6 Republican state senators who want MoDOT directors, shall we say, Patrick McKenna's head on a plate as a result.
Because they feel that if he doesn't respect the legislature, which he at one time was a member of, then he shouldn't be in charge of a state department.
So are they saying taxpayers want more money, more gas money and road work than they do for paychecks here, those 6 Republicans?
Right. I talked to the Senate President Pro Tem, Cindy O'Laughlin, and she's upset because she lives in an area of the state that doesn't have much in the way of interstate highways, but they have a lot of what are called letter roads, and these are highway roads that are basically the old farm to market roads that the state took responsibility for in the 1950s. Well, these roads for a while weren't getting the kind of maintenance that they would otherwise require because of a lack of state funding. And she feels that that's still the case.
So what is Patrick McKenna's take on all of this?
Well, he says he's got a department to run. He's got employees that he needs to retain. He's just been given $2.8 billion to rebuild and expand I-70 across the state. And there's talk if this project goes well, then the same treatment will be given to I-44. Well, he wants the employees in place who know what they're doing. Excuse me. He also wants to not have to hear from people. I think in the wintertime, if we have a bad winter, we're going to have a lot of roads that are going to be much slower to be cleared than they otherwise would be.
Like, where's my snowplow? Right.
Oh, excuse me again.
Sure. One more question before you go, if you have a moment. So McKenna's pretty safe in his job, isn't he? I mean, the department heads are appointed by the governor.
Right. So the Highways and Transportation Commission is appointed by the governor, and they select the director of the Highways and Transportation Department. So if the Missouri Department of Transportation were to if the Highways and Transportation Commission lost confidence, then McKenna would be gone. But so far, that has not appeared to happen.
All right. We will leave it there for now. Rudy Keller with Missouri Independent. You can find this story online on their Facebook page and also as well as searching for it on Google. Rudy, we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Anytime.
All righty.